Home, the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's digging. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Move for the win. Team Canada. Garrett Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Canada and the rest of the world, you're listening to the Huckin podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo Wan, living in Kingston, Ontario.
And I'm Danie Proby, currently in Comox, BC, and we are your coast-to-coast guide to all things Canadian Ultimate. Speaking of Ultimate, I was going for a run the other day, and I was like, oh, what podcast am I going to listen to? Popped on a little Huckin podcast, and it was so fun just to listen to it and have no idea what you all were going to say. It was great. So I know Theo did kind of mention to people that I was spending time with family or whatever, and that is still the case. And I'll definitely be missing the next couple episodes as well. Just stars aligned for me able to pop onto this episode and chat with Theo. But first of all, before I even ask him about Ultimate in his life, I do want to say thank you to you, Theo, because I feel like the entire time you've known me, like literally 4 episodes in, my father passed away, and now all this other stuff's happening. I feel like the entire time you've known me, my life has been crazy, and you've just been very helpful and kind of letting me come and go as I need. And I appreciate the flexibility that you've provided during the weirdest time of my life. So there you are, Huckin audience. Theo, played any Ultimate lately?
Well, I can't let that go without saying something. So, Danie, first of all, you don't need to thank me. I didn't know that was coming. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about this off air. I've seen Danie's highest moments, all these coaching, playing out with the name escapes me right now. What was the Masters team you played on at Wilma? Cold. There you go. You're doing all that cool stuff. You're playing walk. You're making traffic, and then also some of the things as humans that we deal with. So we do appreciate Danie being on here today. Great question. I did play Frisbee twice, actually, just within the week. So went to Ottawa, about a 2-hour drive, depending how fast you are on the roads, is all I'm going to say. And what practiced with the mixed team out there in Crank, went to there. I was told that, is this going to be on the podcast? So if anyone's on Crank and listening to this, yes, I'm going to tell people that I was there. It was a fun time. And I'm excited to see what their team does. And then on Tuesday, I went to a pickup with Out in Gatineau, but the actual pickup was in Ottawa. And this dome, I'm going to say this really quickly, but this dome is insane. It has a 400-meter track that's like measured out. They have multiple volleyball courts, high jump, like triple jump or long jump pit, multiple fields, and it's a high school. So I don't know what they got in high schools over there out in BC, but this high school in Ottawa is like a prep school for sports. And it's killing it right now. It's a sweet facility is all I'm going to say.
Wow. I mean, sweet. Also, people must know by now that anything that you and I do now and anywhere we go, everything's on the record unless they tell us otherwise.
Yeah. Have you ever, okay, this is aside here. Have you had people say to you like some information and then they'll say, Danie, this is off the record?
Yes.
Because that happens quite often now. Yeah. And it's really it's been fun to navigate where I'm like, okay, this is on the record right now. I actually legitimately want to know for the podcast. So if you share this, it's going to go on. So then you warn people, you got to be the proper media people like that.
Sometimes I like just being like, oh, it's off the record and like wink at them, even though of course I wouldn't share, but then make them like a little uncomfortable. Like, is this off the record? like, is this
now every time you talk to Danie, you're going to question it. But Danie, any, You first of all, you said you're in, where is it? Comox, BC?
Yeah, it's where my
right?
sister lives. So family's all here. We're all together.
Comox, where is that?
It's on the North Vancouver Island.
So you have to ferry over?
Yeah, I've been here like every week, ferrying back and forth between the mainland and the island. I'm like a frequent flyer on the BC ferries. I don't know, they should know me by name by now, but they don't. It's kind of offensive.
And have you been able to, I know you've been coaching and getting your, Ulti-World film watching. We're going to talk about this later, but Danie definitely even watching some of the men's game.
Yeah.
So besides scouting and watching Frisbee, have you been playing at all?
No, I think I played a little bit of goaltee with UBC I think that was it. No ultimate, because I haven't been able to make any league games. I've been running and gymming and those kinds of things. but-
Pickleball, I saw that, right? Is that
pickleball.
right?
She's getting good at
Come on.
pickleball, Theo. So I'm just ready to retire and be a senior citizen.
Pickleball is the greatest game. I will admit this on the podcast. I got like slapped around by someone who's probably double my age in the office here. And he was a killer pickleball player and he killed me.
Yeah.
So it's hard out there for if you don't really know and haven't played. Even though they're older, they got the moves.
Yeah.
Especially in singles.
They know how to move you around for sure. And you're not like right up to the kitchen. You're not playing all the private spots.
Oh gosh, don't even get me started about the kitchen. There's certain rules, like you know how after a serve happens, if you served it and they hit it back, you have to let it bounce like that. Those kind of rules, like they got me.
Yeah, you got to stay back.
And then, anyways, if you're a pickleball player, I know there are some pickleball players out there that listen to this podcast, so enjoy that sport. That's more of a, I think, for Danie and I, a retirement thing.
Yeah.
So, any other catch up we need to do before we head into the news, which I'll be doing solo out here. And then Danie will be with us for the main event. We're actually going to be joined by a member of UVic's men's team, Keegan Freeland. Really excited to have him on, talk about their experience at Stanford Invite. So any other catch-up notes here, Danie, before we move into the news?
I do want to just say, Keegan, dear friend of mine, funny kid, scruffy monkey. I didn't really make fun of him enough on the podcast, but kid's a loose cannon. He's wild. He's funny. I am very sad that he's graduating from UVic this year because I think he is just such an integral part of that team's culture. And he's just got a vibe. If you know him, you know what I mean. And it's cool to have him on the podcast, but if you know him in person, he's even cooler. So that's it.
All right, we're going to head to the news.
We now have breaking news.
All right, time for the news. A little bit of notes to get through here today, and a little bit of a preview of a big Quebec tournament coming up. So to start things off, this is your reminder that you can continue donating for the Team Canada fundraiser. We know the financial burden that going to Worlds can put on one of these athletes. So a lot of them being in university or just out of it need a little bit of help. So make sure you go and do that. Get your name on a jersey. Cool initiative. Along with celebrating at home when they play, you can also help support by doing so financially. So that's the first thing. Next up, we got BC sending a team out. The new Ultimate Club there, Prime, sending a team out to the C4 UC event in the junior side. Pretty excited to see teams from hopefully not just BC, but other parts of Canada go out to Ontario to play this tournament. This is kind of a theme that we're going to hit a little bit on this episode with about fours, and you'll hear about it. I've already plugged it already, but the subs only talking about fours and why that's important. So make sure you go and do that if you're a subscriber. So excited to see what these young kids are about from BC, and we'll find out at this tournament. On an administrative side, we have new Ultimate Canada staff, and I, for one, am really excited about this, because it gives an opportunity for people to see Ultimate Canada at its full strength with its staff, which makes it very exciting. And we know all the staff but one were let go during the pandemic, so slowly bringing and integrating pieces back into it. The first one, Leanne Leduc, was already part of the Ultimate Canada team, had a chance to work alongside her for the multiple national championships this past year, both adult and junior, but she'll be taking over events managing from the university and high school side, junior side, bringing some experience into that. And then Sarah, I hope I'm saying your last name properly, Sarah Eady, the new comms manager. So you got two new staff out here, Ultimate Canada, getting those resources that they need. And I, for one, am super pumped. Next, we're going to talk about Stanford Invite. You know, in the main event, we're going to talk to Keegan Freeland about UVic. So we're going to kind of gloss over the results a little bit because he's going to dive deeper into that. UVic going 1-2 in pool play, seeded 8th. And UBC was seeded 6th. They went 2-1 in pool play, so a little bit of a different route for them. You could have seen some of their games on the live stream out there. So make sure if you're an Ulti World subscriber to go and do that. you want to watch some of their games. So they started off, UBC did, with a big 13-6 win over Bloodthirsty, a team from Stanford, the hometown tournament host. They would go on to beat Colorado State Habita 13-9. And then kind of the matchup I told everyone to watch last week, they lost to the Sun Dodgers 13-10. Close one out there. But it forced a three-way tie because Habita actually, quote-unquote, upset Washington earlier, actually in the first time slot at 1 o'clock Pacific. They won 13-12. Forced a three-way tie, but Habita got the short end of the stick there. They actually ended up with -3 in their differential and remained where they were. So you beat the number 1 seed in the pool, but you still end up third. So that kind of sucks. That set up a pre-quarters matchup for the Thunderbirds, taking on regional rival Oregon State. And I know I was following along with this on Ultiworld Live to kind of see what was happening, but Oregon State comes out with the W. Believe it was Universe. Could be corrected on that. But a tough loss here for the Thunderbirds. I know they were expecting to go at least 8 and perhaps into the semis here. So their finals dreams were dashed from that point on. And then they finished out their tournament in the 9th place semis. They took down another regional rival. So I think this is good for the algorithm. Could be bad. You kind of want to beat up on some other teams as well for some connectivity and also to show that you have a good region. They beat Utah State 12-11, and they beat Wisconsin 11-10. So if both of those games are Universe, that's pretty hype for your squad. And some good things to build on here. I know 9th place, probably not where they wanted to be. They were seated a little bit higher than that, and coming into the weekend were just inside the top 20 for Ultiworld's power rankings. But they got to be feeling okay. I think they were perhaps expecting a little bit more of an exciting result. But you got to take what you can and move on to the next one. Believe there are a couple more tournaments still on the West Coast, so Northwest Challenge being one of them. Hope to see them there. And I'm pumped up about the Stanford Invite on the women's side, which we're going to preview later on in this episode. So now the last thing we're going to talk about is this Quebec tournament. For those who don't know, Fours is amazing, first of all. But second of all, there's a big tournament out in Quebec that's called Mars Attaque. By my calculations, 122 teams. You heard that right. 122 teams. That's nutty. First of all, from a tournament TD perspective, I don't even know how you're going to schedule all that. Get the field space. Make sure, some teams not going to get 3 buys in a row or something like that. But that's pretty cool. And there are 3 categories. So there is the elite category, 48 teams. Then there is a comp category that's 29 teams. And then there is a regional category with 45 teams. And within that, at least in the first and third categories I just mentioned, they have 3 divisions. We're going to focus more specifically on the elite, where there are 48 teams, like I mentioned, and 16 teams per division. So by my calculations, based on what I know from our resident fact checker, there are 4 bids up for grabs for C4UC. I'm not going to go through each team because that would just be a very labor-intensive exercise. But not just that. These team names, you're not going to know who they are. You might know some players on it, but you're probably not going to know them based on the team name. So that might not even help you. But the first seed is Valeur et Pastel. They are, from what I could do a little bit of research on some of their players from Quebec City. And they are the number 1 seed out here. Andre Arsenault previously played for the Reals, also on this squad. Yeah, move on to the second seed here. We got 50-50. I like the name. And one thing you're going to know about Fours is everyone's got some different names out here. They're from Gatineau, so a little Gatineau squad making some moves out here. And then the third seed is Trash Pandas out of Ottawa. So if you've heard of Stella or Stello, you're going to see some of those players on that squad. And Cam Harris out here still playing, so Cam Harris on this squad as well. Ninjaks, the 4 seed. And they're a team that we've talked about before because we had Jean-Lévis Champagne on a podcast many, many moons ago talking about his team and the benefit of Fours. They've been a frequent flyer in the Quebec scene. And right now, if things went to seed, they would get a bid. But they're going to have to fend off another team from Ottawa and Davy Sitters. I mentioned that previously with Trash Pandas is another kind of Stella, some Phoenix players in there as well. So those are your first 5 seeds. I'm going to go all the way to 6. I'll go to 6 and say there's another team from Quebec, Plan B, that are hoping to spoil things and perhaps steal a bid to C4UC. Louis Luncheonette, the final team I'll mention, is a squad that has played C4UC before because I've seen them on live streams. I've seen it. And they have Julie Landry is one of them, Yolan Cabot, Dan Turcotte. They could take a bid, you never know. And perhaps some team I didn't mention. I know there's going to be some more Quebec teams out here, but not just Quebec teams, Ottawa teams. So you didn't see a lot of them play, if at all, at the O4UC because they're going to go into this series where it's a bit closer, a lot more competition with a lot of these teams. If you're a new team, I was talking to someone who was on a new team, new squad, you got to start kind of near the bottom. You got to work your way up. It's not just this one tournament like we see in Ontario. I know Ultimate Experience has their own little set of tournaments, but that doesn't really play in the same way that this does. So this is pretty cool. West Coast, get on the fours scene. You got to do it. And also Prairies or wherever else, East Coasters. I'm hoping there's going to be some film. I'm not going to guarantee it. I don't know. I've seen some film from different fours tournaments before, and I'm sure the teams that aren't in Ontario, Quebec would very much value that as they head over into Durham to play. First weekend of April. I will not be there, unfortunately. I'll be at a bachelor party, but hopefully everyone there has a good time. So that's your news. Stay tuned for main event. We're coming right up after this break. Keegan Freeland going to come on and talk about how UVic did this weekend. They came 6th. So I know I didn't talk about it in the results of how they did because I'm going to let him talk about it. Danny's also going to be on, so make sure you stay tuned for that right after this break.
Hey, c'est Phil Dorval, directeur technique pour Ultimate Québec, et vous écoutez le Huckin Podcast, votre guide pour l'Ultimate canadien d'un océan à l'autre.
All right, everybody, welcome to the main event with Keegan Freeland. We have a UVic captain. How many years have you captained now, Keegan?
This is my 4th year of captaining, 6th year on the team.
6th year on the team. Well, that's a COVID special. So we're so lucky to have Keegan on. UVic had an amazing weekend down at Stanford Invite last weekend. So we're super excited to have him come on here and tell us a little bit more in terms of what went down on the field, get those dirty details. But Keegan, first, before we kind of dive into the tournament, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? How did you get into Ultimate? Why UVic?
This is my, I want to say 11th year of playing Ultimate. I started playing in grade 8 at Argyle. One of my friend's brothers was on the team and he convinced us all to come out. And then, it just went from there. I played with Katie Wong. She convinced me to try out for Bonfire. And then Devin Thompson on Furious, he played Bonfire with me and he went to UVic. So I thought, why not? There's Ultimate there. And then now we're here. And then I'm getting a financial math and economics degree at UVic, finishing up this year. And I tree plant in the summers.
And what else did you used to do? Which is like the best job ever?
Oh, I used to work with Danie at Elevate Ultimate.
Amazing.
Always got to make sure we throw in the plug for that. So do appreciate that. And your team, you had previously played during the season. You've played UBC a couple times. You've played some of these American teams a couple times as well. So what were your goals heading in to the Stanford Invite as a team?
As a team, I think we all wanted to make quarters at least as our hope. And then semis, if possible, if we got a good matchup and things were going well. But we were happy to make quarters. It was a shame that we lost that last game in finals on Universe. But I think we were pretty happy with the results and how we played and how we progressed throughout the tournament.
Yeah, I know, a heartbreaker to end the tournament. And I think UBC kind of fell in that same fashion to that exact team, but maybe different ways. But you had a different pathway than them. So we're going to take a step back and go through pool play a little bit. So you faced Santa Clara, Utah State, and Oregon in pool play. How is your team feeling about those games and those results? Did it go as expected? Did it go to seed? Any kind of insider information you can offer would be lovely.
Yeah, our first game we played Santa Clara. We're really happy with that one. We won 13-5. We tend to struggle to close out games and keep our leads once we start building that momentum. So we're really happy with that. The bottom end of the roster really stepped up this tournament. We bring 22 players down, and getting those guys those minutes and having them prove that like they deserve a spot on the team, deserve playing time. Makes it a little bit harder on the coaches, but makes the top of the roster really happy to see. Then we went into our Utah State game. We played them at Santa Barbara to a universe point win. I think it was 11-10. Not 100% sure on that one. That's when the conditions started to get a little bit worse. We started off with a break against them, and then they traded back with another break of their own. And then we went up a couple breaks to 6-4. And then they came back and got a hold and then punched in 2 breaks to take half. When the wind started picking up a bit, we had a few mistakes, not quite accounting for the wind as we should have. And then the game kind of just traded out to the end. And then it was 12-11 or 12-10 and hard cap went off. And then they scored the last point. And then to finish the day against Oregon, the rain started coming down and the field conditions really started to deteriorate. Not as much as the teams had to play in the second round of games. But for us, it got real windy, real rainy. There's a bad corner of the field. We came out and actually got the first break against Oregon. And then they pushed back and they took us to half 7-3. And we fought back to 13-9, I believe, and lost that one too. We were a bit disappointed with the Utah State loss. We thought we kind of had them, but they've got some good players. They punished us on the turns with fast breaks, just some fast break hucks upwind, and we just couldn't come back from that.
I saw in the Ultiworld Discord, which is a plug to become a subscriber, but there were some pictures of the good field at Stanford Invite, and it was just like mashed up. It wasn't looking good. So you mentioned the wind conditions, but it sounds like the fields weren't great as well, and that's something you had to account for. Was that something that was an issue we're going to go into the pre-quarters game. Was that something that was an issue in the pre-quarters game as well, like the fields specifically?
For some teams it was, but not us because we were on the turf for our pre-quarters game against Wisconsin. But yeah, once we got out of our pre-quarters game to quarters, the field was just mudslide everywhere. It was definitely tough to adjust to.
And as someone out there in the kind of east coast of Canada, we get certain weather. What's the weather like out in Victoria? Are you used to some of the conditions you saw at Stanford Invite, or is it like something new?
I'd say it's completely new for us. We practice on turf only. We do get some wind, but it's more gusty and it doesn't really hold its direction as well as it does at these tournaments in the States. Usually, yeah, it's hard to get good wind practice in Victoria.
You need like a wind tunnel or something, or like go indoors and find that. But we're going to jump into pre-quarters. I know our very own Danie probably was definitely watching, putting up the stories and all that. So, Danie, it says you tuned in, I believe 8-5 for UVic, correct? UVic had the lead, 8-5. Yeah. So you're pumped about that. So tell us about, Keegan, tell us about that game and how it ended up.
Wisconsin was a super exciting game for us. We have one of our guys, Ben Baird, on the team. He's from Wisconsin and is friends with a lot of the guys on the team. They actually had his friend Saul, who plays for Wisco, came out last year to visit him, and he practiced with us at one of our Wednesday morning practices. So it's definitely a really fun game. And actually, it wasn't even supposed to be streamed. We ended up getting switched last minute to the stream field, which was exciting. Yeah, we were definitely a bit nervous to play against Wisconsin. We know they're a good team. They had pretty solid results at Florida warm-up. But we knew come in, play our game, throw some different looks against them, catch them off guard, and hopefully we could pull it out. And we ended up doing so. We had some big plays from players. Ricky McLeod, one Furious and U24 player, had some pretty good box out skies. Max Petnuzzo made some. I didn't get to see them because I was on the sideline at the time, but he made some pretty sick toe tap grabs. And then when the footage comes out, you'll see Niall come out, and there's one, the guy was completely in front of him and he like reached through his arms to grab the disc and he got a break off that. That was one of my highlights from that game. We also had a dropped pole in that game, which was a bit scary near the end.
Yeah. Shout out to Niall, a fellow Sunshine Coaster, which is where I grew up. Okay. So the thing about specifically college men's ultimate, more than I think any other division, crap is volatile out there. And I use this word a lot right now to describe college men's ultimate because it's like a team could be seated way above and a team below them just like gets 4 breaks in a row. Like, what happens in college ultimate? These like momentum swings are pretty intense. And I saw that y'all were up 2 breaks or something at that point. It was 8-5, then it was 8-6. You're kind of creeping up like that. And then there's a bit of a momentum shift and I was kind of getting scared, and then a dropped pull. And so your team was able to kind of get it together and be able to pull it a win. It was pretty good. How were the vibes after that game?
Everyone was super pumped, especially because we had another inter-region matchup against Washington next, and we felt pretty good going into that game. We had good sideline energy. Everyone was staying up, following the play, getting loud for our boys, making plays. It was really good to see.
Yeah, so an amazing finish to pre-quarters, going into quarters. None of the rest of your games seemed to go to cap. So obviously the conditions and the fields were probably still bad the next day. Can you kind of talk us through a little bit about how Sunday went for y'all?
Sunday was up and down. We came out of that pre-quarters game onto the grass field against Washington, and we really struggled to adjust to the grass mud conditions. Just like the timing of the throws is a bit different. You have to be a bit more precise. People aren't moving as fast out there. A lot of people slipping on defense, and we just couldn't quite adjust to the conditions as well as Washington did. We did end up getting a break in the first half and starting out strong, which is something that we have struggled with in the past, having a good first half. But they ended up just pulling away, and they took that one 12-6, I believe.
What happened after that? So you ended up playing against California for 5th place semis. And then, I know you already said this, but then you end up facing Oregon State. So you win pre-quarters, you lose in quarters, but you're still kind of fighting. You're still fighting for points on the algorithm to try to fight for bids, all of these things. So kind of going into that next game, how did you rally after that loss to UW to be able to pull out a victory and then a really close game against a strong opponent in the last game?
Yeah, I think California just finished their quarters on the turf, and then I think it was similar to them adjusting back to the mud on the grass. First half was pretty close. We started off getting a few breaks on them. They got a couple back on us. And then we took half 7-6 after starting on D. So we got the natural break. And then half, I think we got 5 breaks after half to close it out 12-7. Something like that.
Yeah, it was 12-7. So if you were actually up only by 1 at half and then you finished beating them by 5, you came out with some energy.
Yeah, they didn't want to get as dirty as we did. Before the Washington game, we had everyone, almost everyone, just laid out through the mud, got dirty, got their jerseys dirty, got ready to grind. And California wasn't quite ready to do that, but they're still a really good team. They're missing quite a few players. They had a roster of 15 or 16. due to COVID related issues because they didn't shake hands with us after because they didn't want to get us sick. But yeah, it was really nice to beat California after losing to them by so much at Santa Barbara.
Yeah, no kidding. Good revenge. And then Oregon State, was it kind of trading back and forth, or was it a game of runs?
It was more of a game of runs, I'd say. Oregon State's a really similar team to us. I feel they've got good sideline energy. They're chippy. They've got some really good players out there. It started off, I think we took half 7-5 or something like that. And then it was, we'd get a hold, they'd break us, and then we get a hold, they'd break us, and then they broke us to take the game 12-11.
So you finish up the tournament, and now, everyone's favorite website, if you don't know it already, frisbee-rankings.com. You got to check it out, because I'm sure UVic, UBC, they're looking at this all the time because they want to see where bids could be allocated. And right now, everyone's favorite team, BYU, you like them because they're not going to play on Sundays. They're going to give a bid to somebody else, so that's good stuff. So BYU right now, Oregon, UBC have earned bids for the Northwest. Washington, Utah State, Victoria, Oregon State, all within the kind of the top 35, looking on the outside looking in. But like I said, BYU is going to gift a bid to somebody. So what are your thoughts on the region, chances at nationals? Will we see lots of Canadian teams this year? We're hoping for it.
I think Northwest Regionals is really up in the air as compared to like my first 2 years on the team when we went to nationals. It was like Oregon and UW are a lot better than the other teams, and that's more of a fight for the last bid. This year I feel, despite what the results say, we feel a lot tighter with those teams. We feel like we have a better chance of upsetting them. We've already beat UBC once this year, but then they beat us pretty bad at Dogwood Bowl, so we know we can beat them. It just comes down to who wants it more. College is a weird game. There's a lot of mistakes out there. Just ends up who's having the better day. So yeah, I think us and UBC definitely have a chance at making it to nationals, but it also could go the opposite way and neither of us make it to nationals, despite how good we are.
Yeah, it's pretty classic stuff out here. I think that the Northwest region is going to be fascinating at regionals. Now that we know that it's in Salt Lake City, it's going to be even weirder out there. So do you think UVic is the type of team that would send a bus to Salt Lake City as well? Or are you going to fly to this tournament?
Well, I just found out about an hour before the pod that it was in Salt Lake City. Already? So we haven't brought it up amongst the leadership, but busing is definitely an option. My sister is the captain of the UVic women's team. She brought it up to me. She texted me and it's like, flights are already so expensive. I don't know how we're going to make it to regionals. We don't even know if we're going to regionals. So it's a lot to come at us, but in the past we've had good regionals. Well, at least 2019, 2018. So yeah, we're excited to show what we got. We have like a lot of new players or new to Ultimate players. So like throughout the season, they learn so much and get so much better that when it comes around to regionals, it feels like we're a completely different team than we were back at Santa Barbara when we played.
Yeah, it would be unfortunate if teams weren't able to go to regionals just because it's in Salt Lake City. So if you don't know West Coast geography, from Vancouver, that's like a 15-hour drive. And if you don't know Vancouver Island, like it's an hour drive to the ferry, it's a 2-hour ferry, it's another hour, and then 15 hours. So it is a really big commitment to go to regionals. And there's not that many teams that far east, and there's so many teams west. And so whenever they put it in Utah, it just makes it so expensive for the majority of the teams in this region. It's really unfortunate. Yeah, I'm still kind of devastated at the news, to be honest. So, Theo, do you have any other questions for Keegan?
First of all, thank you for being a fan of the podcast, Keegan, and your team's social media. It was popping off this weekend. You were loving Huckin. We appreciate that. I'm actually going to flip this on to Danie because I know Danie has a question. Danie has a question, actually, not me. So, Danie, I'm flipping it over to you.
Okay, Keegan, can you tell me the official reason why the UVic men's team consistently tags the UBC women's team in all of your stories?
Oh,
whose attention are you trying to get?
Look, there's a lot of people running this social media account.
Call them out.
We'll call him Max Petnuzzo. He's a big fan of the UBC women's. He's got quite a few friends on there. I guess he's trying to get their attention.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty funny. So
did it work? Did it work? Is the real question.
Well, you'd have to have been at Dogwood Bowl Party to know.
Amazing. Keegan, here's your last opportunity to shout out any teammates that you think popped off this last weekend that maybe didn't get a mention already.
Yeah, I've already mentioned our sideline presence and all the guys who maybe didn't get as much playing time. It was really good to see them develop throughout the tournament, and they really put in work when it mattered and helped keep the boys fired up. I'll shout out one of our rookies, James Edgel. He came onto the team this year, played a little bit of juniors in high school, and he really stepped up this weekend. He's one of our handlers. He's really calm with the disc, doesn't take too many errant shots, which is rare to see from a young player. And then on defense, he's laying out everywhere, putting in the work. Who else? JP's Justin Petnuzzo. He stepped up also a lot this weekend. He's moving into more of a different role than he plays on Furious, as opposed to cutting. He has to do more handling. And yeah, he's gone a lot more confident in that position. It's really, really great to see. I've been playing with him throughout my 6 years. He's the only one who's still around with me. So it's always a blast to see him still improving and getting better out there.
I was surprised to see you still playing again this year. I just assumed you must have been out of eligibility, but the 6 years thing makes sense. So I would have sold my left arm to play one more year of college.
Maybe a kidney instead, so you could have both arms to actually keep playing, no?
That's true. I don't know why I said arm. You can have my left ear and for another year of college. Gladly.
It's a blessing and a curse because we also missed 2 years-ish in the middle with COVID.
True. And lost players, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Keegan, thanks for all the shout-outs. I know you gave one to Ricky earlier. We had to mention last time that he got skied, so the fact that he's getting some positive attention now is good. And it sounds like you have a few of those Furious players. That's really, I think it really helps your program, and especially like for the younger players to learn from them. So
I forgot one last shout out. I won't tell you too much about this player, but Jordan Reek Atchinson. Remember the name?
Hey, we like that. It's like a prophecy, you know? There you go.
Remember the name.
All right, well, thanks for coming on. Stay tuned. We're going to jump into our second and main event where Danie and I will stay on and talk about Stanford Invite in the women's division coming up this weekend. The UBC women's will be going, so we'll be previewing that after the break.
Hey, this is Daniel I, co-founder and captain of Danger Noodle, your 2022 CUC Co-Bronze medalist. And you're listening to the Huckin podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
Second main event coming at you. It's Stanford Invite again, but it's women's division time. And first off, I believe the tournament, is it the same location or is it, that has changed, correct?
Yeah.
So tell that, first of all, before we even get to the preview of like the pools, talk about that because it's a different location.
Yeah. So because the weather was so bad last weekend, and also I think it's supposed to be horrendous on Friday as well, the fields are just going to be unplayable. And so they've closed them. And so they've moved the fields to Stevenson.
Yeah.
And annoyingly, when I went to UVic, we never went to Stanford Invite. We only went to Stanford Open, and it was always in Stevenson. And so this year, I'm like, I finally get to see the Stanford fields, like the proper ones.
Palo Alto. Yeah.
And then they move us back to Stevenson. So yeah, they're going to be there, which is hard because we do have some people flying in at different times, and it's about a 2-hour drive from the airport, and they're not going to be like close to the car. Anyways, it's a whole mess, but we have a really good travel and logistics and safety committee who are figuring it out on UBC. So
love that. It's like any other, university organization. So pools are out now. We were kind of waiting for it before we recorded, obviously, to make sure we had the information for you. So we're not going to break down every pool. We're a Canadian podcast, so we're obviously going to break down the Canadian pool, but top 4 seeds, UNC Pleiades number 1, Colorado Quandary number 2, your UBC Thunderbirds 3, and then BYU coming in at 4. But just remember this, BYU will not be playing on Sunday, so someone's going to lose a game of some sort. I don't know how that's going to work, but BYU coming just for one day, because usually they go to like these Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournaments. So anyways, one day for them. Those are your top 4 seeds. The pool itself, you got the 6th seed here. I'm looking at Tufts, EWO, and then UC Davis and California to round it out. So, Danie, your initial thoughts when you saw the pools there, because you're coaching UBC. If for some reason you're listening to the podcast, you didn't know that. Now you know. Danie coaching UBC. Initial thoughts with the pools and what you see out there.
I mean, it kind of shakes out how I was assuming it was going to. I'm pretty sure the people that made the tournament format were following the Ulti-World Power Rankings for the most part, because there's no other rankings, or there weren't at this point any other rankings that had any kind of, like, UBC hasn't played any sanctioned games. So they kind of had to go off of the best educated guess. So it kind of shook out how we expected. So I've been watching some tape of these teams that kind of fall in our pool. So I feel very good about these matchups. I think Tufts specifically has a really fun style of ultimate that I think our defense is going to match up really well against. They are kind of a run and gun style play a team, so they're quite aggressive on both O and D, and so those types of things really excite me as a coach because we get to try lots of fun stuff against them. The ultimate's going to be nice and quick, which is always exciting, so I think it's going to be good. Feeling confident, but never how do I say, never quite.
They might be listening, so you gotta watch your words out here.
No, I mean, I'm confident in our squad, but I want to make sure that I'm taking it every point as it comes. Like, I'm so competitive, even when I'm coaching, that I want to win every point always. So even when it's like 13-2 and then the team scores and it's 13-3, I'm like, darn it. So like, I'm confident, but every single point I want to win. So that's where my energy is going, is helping the team, helping to position the team to be as successful as humanly possible while hitting all of our other goals, which are growth, development, chemistry building, systems development, all those things.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Ulti-World Power Rankings, and pretty much, at least we'll go with the top 10 to start. I think there's only like 1 or 2 teams not going in the top 10, so Vermont and Carleton. But everybody else out there, they're ranked pretty high. So Tufts is ranked 7, and so there's going to be some good competition for you. I know Bellingham Invite was probably feels like many moons ago. So what have you been working on as a squad to get ready, knowing that your last tournament was, I don't even know when it was, I think late January, early February, is that right?
Yeah, it was late January for Bellingham Invite, and we did have the Dogwood Bowl against UVic, and then since then, well, we've also scrimmaged against a Traffic and Friends team, which was a good close game. I think we lost by 2 or 1. And then we scrimmaged against Richie and Friends, or Friends and Associates, which is basically like, it's a team that Traffic scrimmages against of men and open players with sometimes a couple women that will join. And the point is that they just consistently play defense on us for Traffic, so that when we go to a tournament, there's no zone that we can't get around, because we were just playing against like World Games men. So we did the same thing for UBC last weekend. So they got to scrimmage a lot of zone and a lot of poachy looks. They basically throw a lot of different stuff at UBC. And in our lines, we had them kind of working through it, navigating through it. Like, we have Brendo, we have Kev Underhill out here. It was good times. And we scored twice. Legends. It was a very long game and we scored twice. But when every other game we had played, we'd only been scored on 1, 2, or 3 times. it was really good for us to have that experience. And so I feel like that's the perfect segue. That's part of the prep we've been doing. We've been very intentional about all the training blocks that we've been doing. And this tournament is like the marking or the marker of the end of our prep block. So this weekend, we get to kind of see where we stand with all the things that we wanted to work on in block 1 and block 2. And then we're in nationals prep after that. So this tournament is going to show us a lot. I'm really excited.
And if the first day shakes out the way you want, you'll get a bye into the quarterfinals. So if you come second or third in your pool in this tournament, similar to the men's one last weekend, you will play a pre-quarter matchup. You kind of want to avoid that, but hey, we talked about earlier with UVic, they were able to come through and win that pre-quarter matchup even as a lower seed, so it is possible. If things go out to the way they're seeded at least right now, if you win the pool, you would play the winner of Stanford and Washington, correct?
It kind of looks like that. It's complicated because of the BYU situation. So
you're right, because it could be Western Washington then.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that it would, in the pool D, whether it's Stanford or BYU finishing first or second, assuming that's the way it goes, it doesn't matter. Because say Stanford loses to BYU, they're still first. Then Western Washington would be second. So it's kind of interesting because typically you'd think the third place team of Pool A would be weaker than the second place team in Pool D, but it's not the case because of the BYU not playing on Sunday situation. So I have a feeling we're probably going to be playing the winner of UW Santa Barbara if we're in that game. And if we're in a pre-quarter game, we'll I don't know who we would face. But if we did come first in our pool, I think that's how that would shake out, which is an exciting route for us.
You played Washington earlier in the year, but from the sounds of it, I think I'm going to say this confidently: both teams are going to look very different. So if you do have that matchup again, it's going to be. I'm sure this is the messaging from you and the rest of the coaching staff. It's not the same UW team that you beat pretty handily at Bellingham Invite.
Yeah, and even when we beat Oregon really handily at Bellingham Invite, when I watched footage of them at the last tournament they were at, they looked completely different. And we do not hold any of those results at Bellingham Invite close to our hearts. It's not part of our identity or anything. It was just good mucky reps. We just outmucked the other teams. We just out-resiliented the other teams and outwinded the other teams. It's early in the season. We have a very experienced team. Even our rookies show up on our team with lots of experience. So it's kind of like an over-exaggerated snapshot of where our team's going to be. It's very inflated at the beginning of the season because everyone on our team can throw and catch, whereas all these other teams catch up by nationals. And so we took those results with a grain of salt, is all I'm saying. We're ready to play UW and score all the points that we can because, again, competitive.
And we're going to give a little insight for the audience as well, because you see UBC in the power rankings number 4. People might say, hey, UBC hasn't really played a sanctioned tournament yet. Why are they so high? I can confidently say that Danie and I are not skewing those results. We actually do not vote in the Ultra World Power Rankings. So these are the American writers. They're giving love to UBC and showing that. So potentially if, things happen, you go into semis, if things stay to seed, you'd play Colorado. That's got to be exciting for you. I know you don't want to look too far ahead, but as a media person, I got to do that. So Colorado, that'd be a cool matchup, right? They just won a President's Day. They went undefeated. They haven't lost yet. Only played one tournament, but haven't lost yet. So that should be fun if you were to get there.
That would be amazing. Like, that's obviously the ideal route to be able to see all the best teams in this tournament. That's what we want. We don't want to play a bunch of teams that aren't not challenging us, and we know Quandary is going to challenge us. I'd love to see UNC as well, and the only opportunity for us to see UNC is either if we both tank it or if we both go to the end. So I want to see these teams. It's going to be really good for our development. One note is I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, that Stacey Gaskell might not be at this tournament because I think that there's a snowboarding or other sport thing.
Snowboarding, right?
I said it, I was like, why do I feel unconfident all of a sudden?
No, Olympic snowboarder.
Yes.
Pretty sure. We're both nodding, trying to give ourselves the
yes.
Yes.
So
I mean, a quick Google search would help us, but which I'll do currently.
Definitely impact their team because it looked like from what I'm seeing, their offense is, throw near Stacy, score a goal. So if they don't have Stacy, it'd be interesting to see kind of what other players kind of come up from Stacy's shadow in order to get their points. So.
Yeah, and it's been confirmed through Google, snowboarder. So
snowboarder.
I do want to see that UNC UBC matchup. I had the pleasure of calling that game, and last year in the quarters, Danie, you weren't there, but this year you get to be a part of it. Hopefully, if your team makes it to the final there, so that's exciting stuff. Any other thoughts you have about Stanford Invite? I said this last week. It's one of my favorite tournaments. It's different this year that they split it because I think traditionally it's been together. But any final thoughts here about Stanford Invite?
I'm excited. There's a small chance, there's a pretty big chance that I'm not able to actually go. And so, funnily enough, like Robbie, Brennan, and I are the kind of main coaches for UBC. We've been there on the beginning of their season and we're there more often. And Daisy kind of comes and helps out sometimes and was able to cover Robbie at Stanford and is able to do like some Saturday practices and stuff like that. And then there might be a chance that Daisy is coaching them without either me or Robbie. So shout out to Daisy for being awesome. And also, I'm just very excited for the team. They've been really hungry at practices lately. So, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
It's hard too as a team where you're practicing and you get these scrimmages like you mentioned, but to be able to see the competition that you'll have to beat if you want to make it all the way at nationals, that's got to be just like, that's kind of the fuel that's going to help them for the rest of the year, kind of gain these matchups now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be awesome. I'm excited.
So that's going to wrap up our little mini preview. We got one team going. It would be nice to get a couple, but hey, we're gonna stay with the Canadian content obviously here, and so previewing UBC, we're gonna hit the outro now. So that means you're just gonna follow us on the socials, hit us up there, send us an email. We love the YouTube comments, by the way, Dan. I'm not sure if you've been seeing some of these YouTube comments, but we do appreciate that because that's another way people can communicate with us hosts here. And thank you for tuning in. You can stay on for subs only if you want to hear me talk about fours and why it's, for the BC folks, they ain't about the fours, they're about the mini. But out in the East, they're about the fours, and I'm going to talk about why it's really good and why if you're a West Coast team or maybe in the prairies and fours isn't a big part of your Frisbee diet, that it should be. So you can hear about that in the subs only. Danie will be signing off for now. Danie, any final thoughts for the audience before we sign off this kind of shorter episode, not a girthy one like your faves,
No, it's not my fave. No, I'm just really annoyed that regionals is in Utah. That's kind of all I can think about right now. It's so annoying. So yeah.
That's your final thought.
That's it.
Make regionals not in Utah. There you go.
The worst.
All right, we'll see you next time, and we're going to recap Stanford Invite. We also want to get on the new staff at Ultimate Canada, give them a chance to introduce themselves to the greater Ultimate community and kind of learn about what their background is and what they're hoping to accomplish with their time with UC. So at some point, we're hoping to have them on. Probably not going to be next week, but at some point, you might see them on the podcast. So we'll see you next week.